Hello and welcome to the Home Screen Podcast. This is episode 14. Today I'm joined again by Ben.
You sound thrilled with that.
I can't get him away.
Pleasure to be here as always.
He let himself into the flat and he was like, we're doing a podcast. I was like, oh, okay.
Not a gunpoint or anything, we're all right.
He has a knife at me. We're recording a podcast, sit down. So yeah, today we're going to be doing another episode where we go back and revisit a bit of an older film on your recommendation, actually. Today we're going to be discussing About Time. This is a film that came out in 2013, directed by Richard Curtis, and it stars Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams. Would you say this is a rom-com, or is it just, it's not really, or would you say it's like a romance drama, or what genre would you say this slots into?
It's definitely rooted in sort of like rom-com, but it sort of takes a sort of sci-fi sort of spin to it with the whole time travel elements.
Yeah, so just to quickly cover the synopsis, Domhnall Gleeson's character, Tim, is essentially told by his father, Bill, who's played by Bill Nye, that the men in his family can travel in time along their timeline, essentially by going into like a closet or a dark space and concentrating and clenching their fists. And so the whole film is basically following him as he tries to find love and navigate his life, using this power when he sees fit, essentially to kind of manipulate certain events to get like essentially the perfect day and to get what he wants, but then he realizes as it goes on that there's certain things that can't be undone because of the knock-on effects of different events. We're going to be talking about full spoilers. This came out 10, 11 years ago. You recommended this to me. Why do you like About Time so much?
You haven't guessed at this point. I'm partial to a bit of a rom-com. You know, I like that sort of that fuzzy feeling. You know, yeah. I think I first saw it. I think we spoke about it. It was like way back in college. We spoke about it in an ethics lesson, and it was basically the opening 20 minutes of him realising that he could travel back in time, and it's like the New Year's Eve scene and like what he does differently, and there were many ethical questions that led on from that. But I thought, this seems like a good film, and I quite like Domhnall Gleeson as an actor. I just whacked it on, and like it's just one of them films that I can come back to periodically, and it always gets me in the feels. It always satisfies me as a watch, even though I sort of know, you know, obviously you forget bits of films, but you remember the vast majority. It always satisfies me every time watching it. It always sort of hits the spot. It's a nice watch. So I'm going for a thing with my mate Tom at the moment where we're just sitting and watching films that, you know, he's not seen or I've not seen, and largely for him it's like it's rom-coms, so I'm sort of like recommending these sorts of films. So you just so happen to be in on that one, on the one evening that we sat and watched it.
I'm glad I was. I'm very, very impressed with this. I think I gave this like 4.5 stars on Letterboxd. Yeah, it's stunning. I actually think it's, I don't know what I'd put it up there with, but I think it is one of the best British films I've seen off the top of my head. I know there's the James Bonds and the Paddington films and things, but I think that this is quintessential British cinema. It's got such a nice...
It's up there, isn't it?
It's a certain, what's the phrase, je ne sais quoi. It's got a certain essence to it. It just feels very genuine and authentic and British. I didn't have the biggest budget in the world. It's just a good story and good actors. And it sounds bizarre to say that it feels grounded when it's got essentially a sci-fi concept at the root of the movie. But yeah, it did feel like a really very wholesome film.
Yeah, it's something that you can almost, maybe not almost see happening, but you know when you get like American films and, you know, you get British characters in it, and they're always sort of, they're always from London, they're always over talk like Danny Dyer or like, you know, old school like Cockney blokes. It doesn't feel like it's people that you could like that live in here. You could generally walk down the street and sort of meet. There's an authenticity to the characters, and I think as well like a lot like not carries the film, but largely for me what makes it such a good film is the relationships and the chemistry that the characters have on screen together. Like largely, you know, Tim's, like Domhnall Gleeson's character, his relationship with Mary, who's played by Rachel McAdams, like extremely well, and then his relationship with his dad, I forget his name, but Bill Nye's character.
He doesn't have a name in the film. He's just credited as Dad. Bill Nye plays Dad.
Is he?
Yeah.
No, surely.
I actually don't think he has a name, because even their mum just referred to him as like your dad. I don't think, unless it's printed somewhere at the funeral.
Yeah, it'll be somewhere, but
it's credited as Dad. Yeah, their relationship is lovely, and that's something that really grows throughout the film, especially towards the ending, which I guess we can talk more about later. Yeah, I fully agree that the relationships are just so genuine and believable. And it almost feels like their chemistry is so good that it almost feels like I wouldn't have been surprised if some of them were like unscripted stuff of them just like walking down the street, and there's a bit where he meets her for coffee in one of the ones where he basically introduces himself to her, and they're just talking in the diner, and there's the conversation just feels so natural that, and there's just such little like intricacies in the conversations that I'm like, I doubt this was scripted and repeated each time. That it just feels just natural chemistry.
Yeah,
and
like
seeing
we
what
said
comes
before, like
from
authenticity.
that.
I think that's a good story for me. That's what gets me. You know, the relationships between characters. I think maybe not making it believable because, you know, any without sounding like a critic too much, any actor worth his salt can make you believe something, like believing that they're feeling a certain emotion or feel a particular way. It just felt very like real.
It feels so real.
And it's a bit of a roller coaster of a film as well. You know, there's some bits that you sit and like there's some particular jokes in there that you sort of like, you know, laugh at, like completely catch you off guard. You know, like that's like good writing. But then there's other bits that sort of makes you feel something. You know, there's like I'm trying not to go too far into spoilers, just so like until later on. But for a film that's over 10 years old, by the way, as well. Like, are we being too cautious here?
I mean, I think it's absolutely fair to discuss spoilers because, like, to get into why this film works, you really have to get into like some of the more dramatic bits in it.
Yeah, I think initially, I think when he first discovers the power to travel through time, and which is a wild concept for something like a rom-com anyway.
Yeah.
It toes a line extremely well between the two sort of genres, if you want to call them. It doesn't delve so far into sci-fi that aliens pop up, where you've got like lightsabers knocking about. It leans into that genre a little bit, but it does a very good job of balancing that. I think how it develops the sort of ethical quandaries that he sort of has to face. Like, you know, like initially it's sort of, I think he has the conversation with his dad, like, you know, what do we use it for? He says for him it's books, it's literature, you know, he reads so much. His brother, I think it's like not Uncle Desmond, he's the really eccentric chap, but one of his brothers was like, oh, like he did it to pursue money, and he left him completely alone, and there was somebody else.
Because he just felt empty.
Yeah. And then somebody else, and he's like, what happened with him? And he's like, absolutely sod all. So for him, it was always about finding love, but it's how it sort of develops to sort of being sort of, that first time that he tries using it with Tom Hollander's character, Harry, the playwright, to help his play not be a disaster.
He helps because you can see that he's struggling with a bit he's in a bit of a slump and he's feeling a bit depressed after it flopped. He's like, well, I'll avoid this by helping it go well.
But then you find out that it's how he discovers the fact that, because he goes back to help that, it's the same night that he first meets Mary.
So he can't do one or the other.
Yeah, basically.
And it's this, and then in the same way, now it definitely in spoilers, where he tries to avoid his sister Kit Kat's car crash and nearly death. Goes back and helps talk around that situation. He doesn't live it through. He basically saves her and then goes directly to go and see his kid, whereas it's a different kid.
Basically, I think the way it works is he does his little fist clench in the dark room, appears in the moment, and then returns back to where he came from.
And then realises it's a different kid.
But yeah, like to everyone else, it's always been that way kind of thing. So I think initially he's like, he goes back to help to pick her up, so she doesn't have the crash. But then he realises that it's almost not enough and she's sort of too far down that road. So he takes her on a little trip and it's just like, right, you're never going to meet, I can't remember what their arsehole boyfriend's called. Yeah. He goes back far, like, I think it's the same night where he finds out. He goes back to that New Year's Eve party when he first finds out, to never meet this guy. But then, like you say, it opens up that moral quandary of it, because you've gone so far back, things could play out almost identically, but because you've not something to do with the kid, because he's not done it at a particular time. I still can't remember how his dad explains
his dad, he puts it quite bluntly, is like
you can't go past the birth.
That chance of you can't go past the birth because of that sperm at that point. Like, it's just such a 1 in a million, 1 in a billion chance that there's no way to replicate that. So that's.
But surely that should be like the night the child was conceived rather than the birth. But anyway, I think for all intents and purposes, the film says it's the birth.
But then that's the thing, is that's one of the bitter truths, is that he essentially, in order to circumvent that and to have his sister be happy and also have his kid, he essentially has to let her have that crash, and then they coach her through it in recovery, don't they?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things of, like, they don't really linger on that realization for too long, but about him being like, this has to happen. She has the crash, but then they coach her out through recovery and into being in a relationship with, is it Harry? Jay, sorry.
Dodgy Jay, yeah.
Jay.
But I think it does a very good job of sort of like that, because I think that it's a little bit of a shock when it sort of happens at first. Like, because he goes to pick up the kid and it's almost like, because it's a little boy rather than
it's like a ginger girl, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't remember her name, but like they're their eldest at the time. Yes. That's the only kid that they have at the time. Yeah, the way that it's just some like little kid and you just sort of like, what is going on here? Yeah, and then obviously later on in the film, it sort of this issue sort of raised its head again because they're having a third child, which is something that he's hesitant to have with Mary initially because it means that he can't. I think at this point his dad's passed away.
I know you're right.
His dad has passed away, but he keeps going back to see him.
Yeah.
Like it's really cool the way that him and his dad have that sort of understanding.
Yeah.
Like he'll just walk into a room and obviously in the timeline they could be absolutely anywhere, but he always asks him like, "Oh, where have you come from?" You know, I think the day of the funeral is like, "Oh, it's the big day," and he's like, "Oh, thanks for dropping in," and then he like reads him an extract from the like. It's such a cool concept, and I think it's dealt with so well. It's mastered almost.
Yeah, and it's mastered because of their relationship of like you're not having to catch someone up to speed of this is how it works. He does with Kit Kat, I guess, slightly, but with whenever he just walks into his dad's immediately aware of like, what could you have done? And he susses it out so quickly. And then one of their final conversations when he walks in and where he joins the timeline at the point of time when they're playing table tennis, and then his dad gathers, he's like, "Oh, what's up?" And he's like, "Oh, is this it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I can't remember the exact line, but he says something like, "It's the last bit of extra time."
I've used up all my extra time.
Yeah, and then the last bit of the extra time.
I think that gets me. That sets me on the way to sort of like sobbing town. But it's when they completely ignore everything that they've previously set up, and you know they go back to when he was a kid, and they go for a stroll on the beach, and he's like, you know, if we're really careful, it won't.
Yeah.
And I don't mind sort of bending the rules that they've set out for the entire film. I don't mind them bending that for such a good scene. Like it still gets me. Like you know, I start like welling up. Like especially with the soundtrack as well.
Oh, it's a great score. And I don't have an issue with it in terms of even like with the lore as well of like that is fine because they're just running along the beach in the waves. They're both aware of the situation. They're not talking to people. They're not interacting with things. So I think that does check with the lore. One plot hole or I guess the one bit of as soon as you make a film, because this is technically sci-fi and time travel, as soon as you do it, there's a whole can of worms that kicks open. And the one that really doesn't make sense is when he goes back with Kit Kat, being like, the guys in our family have had the ability to do this. And then when
it's not something that I've ever thought of previously, but now you've mentioned it.
When he takes her back, and it's like, well, is there no point where he would ever reveal that to
his wife,
to Mary? Yeah. And then they could go back and do stuff together, or they could go back and... But then that's just open interpretation. Like, further down the line, they could go back, but only to a certain extent, because they wouldn't want to go back past the birth of the kids. So, yeah, that was just one, I guess you could say, potential plot hole. But then they only really... He takes her back to that one evening, so they don't meet him, and then they then go further back down the timeline. It's not like he takes her back and then she lives out the whole extent.
No, there's always like a sort of like you go back, make the changes you want to do,
and then you go and see how it's knocked on.
Yeah.
So I guess that doesn't quite follow it, but also I don't really care because like it's not that deep and it doesn't.
Yeah, I think with these sorts of films, if like you say, the moment you open that sort of box that is time travel, sci-fi stuff, there are going to be people that sort of like, oh, time. I mean, like you've seen Endgame.
Yeah.
You know, the scene where they're discussing time travel. It's like time travel doesn't work that way. We don't have time machines here, so we don't really know how time works. And I feel like I struggle with it too because I have to understand everything and know sort of like how stuff works.
Yeah.
I think if you do sort of like glaze over that, it's such a brilliant film and it plays really well. Like for what it is, just a like incredible film to watch. I thought, especially on a first watch for you, like you're saying.
So impressed, and I think it's. For me, again, off the top of my head, it sits with a few films similar, where I guess you'd say they're rom-coms, but they're quite serious rom-coms. Essentially just romance films that are dramas and comedies as well, with 50-50, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, it's another one you told me you're watching in lockdown. I really enjoyed that one.
50-50, and also Palm Springs. Did you watch that?
Palm Springs is another one. That's a sort of another one on the time travel circuit, isn't it?
With
Andy Samberg.
And...
It's not Linda Cardellini. What's her name?
Kristen Milioti.
Yes, I don't know why I get her and Linda mixed up. They're completely different.
But that's another similar. I guess Palm Springs is more comedy. I think About Time's probably a bit more serious, but it's also a time travel.
Yeah, I think that has a bit of a gut punch in the middle though, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, because is it a little bit like Groundhog Day where they keep reliving the same day? Like so when they fall asleep, because I remember she tries staying awake, doesn't she? She manages to get home, falls asleep, and then wakes up wherever she wakes up.
Yeah.
But you realise, I think it's like 3/4 of the way through the film. Spoiler territory, because it's a newer film. Has she not just slept with a groom or something?
Yeah, something happens that breaks it, I think. And then the J.K. Simmons' character, Roy, is like hunting them down or hunting him down.
I
or something.
completely forgot J.K. Simmons was in that film. Yeah.
I need to rewatch. This came out in 2020 and I watched it in 2020.
I remember it being
I
a
need to give it a
really,
rewatch.
really good watch, like a really good film.
I gave it 4.5 stars as well, actually.
I need to get on this Letterboxd type.
Honestly, it's so good. Anyone that's listening that isn't on Letterboxd, what are you doing? Some people, just on the subject of Letterboxd, some people don't like it because they think it kind of gamifies movie watching. And it's like, well, people aren't really watching it because they want to. They're just watching it because it's popular and just like a tick box and...
What, we're watching stuff for clout.
Yeah, but it's not even like for clout because even though it is a social media platform, you can't really post a good review and hope that review goes viral. So it's not really how it works. Like there's not like a Discover tab or like a feed or anything. The only way you'd really gain a following is if you had a following elsewhere. Mm-hmm. If you had like a big Twitter or Insta following and then you're like, follow me on Letterboxd, then you'd get likes.
Like film accounts and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But
I feel like for me, it's more... If I watch a good TV series, or if I watch a good film, or you know, like this goes for anything like music, games, TV, film. If I watch something good, and I think it's going to be up somebody's street, you know, like me and you, we're like quite fortunate. We share quite a lot of interest in the film, TV space, and probably music as well, and games to be fair. But you know, we're like-minded creatures.
Yeah.
You know, if I watch something and I think Porter will enjoy that, like there's some little bit of like it itches a scratch in my brain when I'm like, I recommend something to you and then you watch it and then you're like, oh, you know what, that was really good. You're like, it would never have been on my radar previously, but you put me onto it and it was really good. Like what you did over like lockdown, you were like, you need to watch Westworld.
Yeah. And
I sat and watched Westworld, especially the first 2 seasons. Loved it.
So good.
It was like I was like hyper fixated on that thing. I was like watching YouTube videos, like explaining and theorizing about stuff and.
It's like I get the same with Charlotte as well, but with anyone, like with recommending stuff to you and other friends, and with Charlotte, where like if you see something and you absolutely adore it, and then you recommend it to people, especially if you recommend it to people and you get to watch it with them and experience it with them, it almost feels a bit like you're watching it for the first time again because you're sort of like
you're almost like gauging people's reactions to stuff.
Yeah, and you know when the good stuff's coming, like Across the Spider-Verse. When I rewatched Across the Spider-Verse with Charlotte, I know in my head, this scene's coming up and this scene's going to be next. And like with June Part 2, I saw it opening night in IMAX and then saw it like a few days after just in regular at the View with Charlotte. And just knowing what's coming and sort of anticipating people's reactions. And as soon as it ends being like, that was good, wasn't it? And then having a discussion. It scratches an itch. And I think Letterboxd is kind of that.
I mean, that's for me. That's all it is. It's like it's people sort of like putting out, you know, like their thoughts, feelings on a film. Sort of like, you know, it's like books as well.
Yeah.
You know, like recommending stuff to people. It's just like to some people, it's almost like a love language, isn't it? Sort of. Meandering it back to the rom-com sitch, but I feel like it's nice to sort of, you know, you'll consume media.
Yeah.
And then, you know, said media reminds you of a particular person, irrespective of the relationship you've got with them.
Yeah.
It reminds you of them. I think that is like one of the highest form of compliment. I'll watch this film. I'm like, you know, I think you'd like it, or you know, like, this character reminds me of you. I don't. That for me, that's what it's about.
It's important,
and I feel like platforms like Letterboxd are for that. And obviously, you're going to get people that just sort of like the 1-star films, like I don't know, like Pulp Fiction, absolute classic. 1 star, like, didn't get it, or like too much swear. I feel like that's for clout. It glorifies people like review bombing films or blah, 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 and everything's opinionated.
Yeah.
Of course, but like that's social media. You're always going to disagree with people. For me, it's finding like-minded people with like-minded interests and genres that you like, and just sharing that experience.
And that's like with Letterboxd. Like I just pulled up like Alien Romulus, what we did last episode on, and I follow probably like 6 or 7 friends and like 6 or 7 content creators and people I follow online, and then I can just see like what I've given it, and then also like what they've all given it, and then you can like click and see like their little reviews.
Someone give it a 2-star there.
Yeah, that's Seth.
I've heard nothing. It's Seth.
Of course, it was Seth. Seth
I've heard
thinks Alien Romulus.
Nothing but good things about that film.
Seth Wilson gives Alien Romulus 2 stars and says it falls apart. Well, Seth, I disagree.
Seth, if you're listening right now, we're gonna have to have stern words, mate.
Right. I won't tell him that he's mentioned in the episode, and I'll see if he says anything. That'll be the test.
Have you listened to the new episode? Yes, of course. I don't think you have.
Don't think you have. Otherwise, you'd have an issue with me. At him. Yeah. Also, just wanted to say, I echoing and agreeing with what you say. Not to get too like arty-farty about it, but and to sound too pretentious, but I think good art isn't just the consuming of it, it's the discussions that it provokes. And I think that's a whole part of the experience, isn't just consuming a TV show or an album or a game or a film. Discussing it with like-minded people and having good conversations about it is an important part of the experience. And I think I've kind of lost out on some of that sometimes. Like if I've gone to see something at the cinema, like I went to see Blink twice yesterday, good film by the way, it's good, but then not being able to discourse with anyone because I don't really know many people that have seen it kind of feels like I'm missing like a portion of the
vital
pie.
Part of the experience.
Yeah, I think getting to unpack it and discuss it with people, even if they agree or disagree, I think the discussion around art is an important part of experiencing it.
Yeah, because I think sometimes like as as widely as you want to go here, not just films, it's down a lot of the time. It's down to interpretation.
Yeah.
Open-ended film, like open-ended films when I was younger used to annoy me because I wanted to know what happened.
Yeah.
So like for me that was sort of like what did the director mean by that? What happens to this character? Because you get invested. Prime example, Inception. First couple of times I watched Inception, obviously didn't really know what I know now, like on a rewatch now.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, he spins the spinner. Really brilliant shot with music going on with Zimmer's soundtrack, and it just wobbles.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to black. First couple of watches of that for me, I'm literally sat there like, is he in a dream? Is he not in a dream? What is going on?
Yeah.
Grown older, like revisited it, watched it. I now understand like A, like it's not even his totem, and B, it's the fact that he's not fixated on that reality anymore. He's spending time with his children, and that for me seems like satisfying. Yeah. Whereas previously I've been like, it's A or B, which is it? Like battering down Chris Nolan's door and being like, which one is it?
And there is a definitive answer which you can seek out, but I think that it's more fun and more rewarding to roll with the interpretation of being in Cobb's mindset, of understanding that like you said, he doesn't care, that he's choosing, at last he has freedom to be with his kids, and that's what matters to him, not being fixated on where are we, are we still in limbo, etc. So yeah
I think that like you've hit the nail on the head with sort of like a big part of the experience of going and watching a film is talking about it with people.
Yeah.
Like I remember like we went to watch, I think it was the second Avatar film. And I remember coming back and like no one said a word because like I think like Sigourney Weaver's character dying in that was just like, it was just completely blindsided us.
Oh yeah, towards the end.
Because I was only a kid at the time, so I was like really sleepy, but I just remember like my mum and my dad driving home and no one said anything, but like, people barely said anything the entire way back. And I don't think a film has ever like got me like that, to the point like that off the top of my head anyway, like that I've wanted to go and watch, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
But there are films out there that do that you literally, like you ever finish like a game, a book, anything, and you just sit there and you be like, what on earth have I just watched?
Yeah.
And you just can't wrap your head around it. You just sit there in silence.
I think it's common, has been common for a while, but it's very common nowadays, of people seeking out online discourse. You'll finish a game, you'll finish a film, you immediately hop online and be like, what do people, because if you do consume it on your own and you don't have someone to talk to, then you just go and look online, which I feel like, unfortunately, most of the time nowadays sways more towards negative than positive online. Even if it's something great and universally acclaimed like Dune Part 2, the people that don't like it will be louder. Yeah, I just think that not being too hyper-focused on online discourse being the be-all, end-all, and just, having someone to chat to.
I feel like it's very, we obviously touched on it on a previous episode before, I can't quite remember which, but how polarising it is.
Oh yeah.
You either love it and you're like, oh, I will die on this hill, like this is a great film, like fight me. And then, the other end of that spectrum is like, it was terrible, like why?
I think it was when we were talking about Deadpool Wolverine and like in relation to the MCU, it's just that online discourse of films nowadays is very rare that most people online will be like, oh, that's like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. It's either great or it's rubbish.
I feel like it's kind of like the cool thing to, well, I'll say cool, inverted commas. It's the done thing now where like the majority majority of newspapers do like the reviews.
Yeah.
There's always one, and it's normally like the mainstream like newspaper outlets, like news outlets. One of them is like a really, really great film, and then like someone's like 1 or 2 stars, like 1.5 stars. It's just sort of like, yeah, the actors are great in it, but like I don't like the plot points. Or someone did it with Guardians 3. I have no idea who it was. Like one that I read, and it was like 1.5 stars. It's just sort of like, oh, like not a very fitting end for like Marvel's ragtag group or something. I'm literally sitting like, did we watch the same film here?
Very much in the minority. Like the Guardian or the Telegraph or someone gave Deadpool Wolverine like 2 stars, saying it was like unfulfilling and unsatisfying. It's like, I disagree. That even though it wasn't the best of Marvel, I still think it's far from being the best.
Who went to watch it and wrote the interview? Was it Martin Scorsese by any chance?
I guess to put a bookend on that conversation, that I do think that conversations with friends and like podcasts, coincidentally, things like Letterboxd, is a nice way to have those tempered discussions. I think that a lot of those quite like bombastic, this franchise is dead, or this film is the best thing you'll ever see, is more clickbaity than anything. I think that's more stuff that you'd see on TikTok and Reels and YouTube. So if you do find yourself in sort of like negative film and media echo chambers, just like chat to friends about it, listen to podcasts and hop on Letterboxd, because having good, intelligent conversations about film and media makes you want to consume more. I think if I just like troll through Netflix and watch Netflix trash and just read like people bitching about it on Twitter, and then I never really engaged with much other discourse past that, I think I just would find it a bit exhausting watching films and series.
Yeah. Do you find you go through phases of like watching a particular type of film? They don't have to be related. You don't have to watch like, oh, I'm going to do like this phase of the MCU, or I'm going to do all of these films. I'm not talking like series, like the Harry Potter series, like just similar like genres of films. Like obviously we watched this recently because I'm on a bit of a hype with like the rom-coms at the minute.
I think so. A lot of the films on my watch list are like the kind of films that you'd see on like Mubi and like classics, or like longer experimental foreign films and stuff, and you really have to be in specific moods to watch those, and it's quite rare that I am. Recently I got on quite a kick of watching more animated films, so I watched quite a lot of the Studio Ghibli films. And then also like Ghost in the Shell and Red Turtle.
Oh, the original or the
one of the 90s original, the anime one.
Did you watch the live action with Scarlett Johansson?
No, we talked about it, but I haven't seen it.
That's another one that I feel like a lot of people were like, oh, it's not as faithful to the source material, or like it does a couple of things wrong. Like as a visual film, like that's like I thought really, really well done.
It's got good reviews. I mean, everyone's going to say the original is better, but the new one doesn't seem horrendous.
It's not a bad film. Like I think it holds up quite well. Like, again, it's not something that I've watched recently, but like I think that one sort of holds up. You have to be in particular moods to watch certain stuff, and I feel like specifically with at the moment with like rom-coms or like comedies, like they're just, for me it's like an easy watch. You don't have to be switched on fully to understand, like you're not trying to watch like Oppenheimer, or
you got to be in the headspace. Like I adore Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I tried to watch it with Charlotte, and it was just
I still don't think I've got all the way through that film.
Exactly, you got to be in the right headspace for it, because it's
been on my list for ages.
Technically a masterpiece and incredible, and got all the accolades it deserves. I think because it got Best Picture and all the Oscars and all the acting Oscars and stuff, that then a lot of people will be like, oh, well, check it out, not realising that you have to be like locked in for this film, because it is like a bizarre, non-chronological, like buck wild ride.
Yeah, definitely being in the right headspace to watch particular films is like you're on
is key, because I don't want to drag myself through some heavy Korean film and then I won't get to appreciate it as much as like if it's like I have a sleep in, I wake up at 11 on a Saturday and I've got a free day, and I'll like be like, right, I'll make some lunch, I'll sit down, I'll put something on Mubi. Like I watched Burning. I watched Burning with Stephen Yeun earlier this year, I think. Loved it because I was like, I need to be in the right position to watch this, because if I watch it at like 2 a.m. or something like really late.
It's one of those, if you've had a bit of an overstimulating day at work and you want to get back, you just want to stick something on that sort of like de-stresses you.
Yeah.
And a film like that where you've got to concentrate. Yeah. It just feels like more work, really, doesn't it?
Like a subtitled foreign film with like a slow burn love story. Like you need to be. It's like 2.5 hours long. Like watching that at like 1 a.m. It was not the place.
We talking Past Lives there?
No, it's very similar though. If you like Past Lives,
I was gonna say that's another romantic, like a rom. Would you call it a rom-com? It's more like a romantic, like elements drama.
More of a romantic drama.
That destroyed me.
Well, speaking of burning, I would recommend watching it if you ever do get the chance to watch it.
Okay.
It is good.
I'm there. Yeah.
One of the ones for the right headspace.
Yeah, so as I say, Past Lives, nice natural segue back into sort of rom-com genre.
Yeah.
That did me in that one. But like, again, that was like, I'm very glad that I watched it.
Yeah, so good. I loved that. And that was one where I went to watch it by myself. I heard a lot of good things about it, and I was just like, I need to speak to someone about this. And I didn't know anyone that had seen it, as I just wrote some like long gushing letterboxd review about it, and then
help me, I don't know what to do. I need an adult.
I have all the feelings right now.
Yeah.
But then as it came more towards the Oscars and the Golden Globes and stuff, more people saw it, and over time be able to chat to people about it. But
Yeah. No, very, very. Again, we're not doing it justice by just saying, "Oh yeah, very good film." Like,
I'd happily do a whole episode on Past Lives because it's so subtle, and I was crying by the end of it. It's a proper sledgehammer, especially towards the end.
yeah, it's not easily done.
No,
Like, it's got to be right. You know, it's a complex cocktail of sound, visuals, and just thinking about it now, I'm getting the goosebumps, and I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, that is an emotional roller coaster of a film.
It's incredible, and I guess also dovetailing it back to About Time, similar, where it's not like this one big dramatic thing happens and then you cry because of it. It's just like the gradual swell. You can feel like the ebb and flow of the film crescendoing to this ending, even though it's not like someone doesn't get like shot or killed, but it's just like you just feel this gradual natural climax, and it
has a really nice
hits.
conclusion as well, doesn't it?
Nice
conclusion.
conclusion.
It just ties up, and I feel like he has the little monologue towards the end where he's like, "Oh, the secret to this power that they have," and he's like, he'll live a day as normal as if he could, and then he'll go back and he'll relive the same day, but like he without all the stresses and worries of living it for the first time. Basically, like, enjoy the little things.
Yeah.
You know, stop to appreciate the little things. And
then he says, it's either just before or just after he had the walk with his dad, he's like, I stopped.
He feels like he doesn't have to do it anymore
because he just does it actively.
Yeah.
Which is it's such a beautiful bow on it, I guess. That was About Time. As with usual with our episodes together, we've just
ramble on quite
rambled
a bit.
for quite
It's
a bit.
about time we finish because
it's a bit late.
Yeah,
can't recommend it enough. We both absolutely love About Time, so check it out. So thanks for listening to this episode of the Home Screen Podcast. Thanks for joining again.
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed it, find us on social media, give us a rating, a like, or subscribe on the podcast platforms or on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.